the other reasons I like the world in general, it's pretty much an anti-hero. Even when he's not doing the right thing, which is usually not, you kind of, you're like, wow, that's definitely not what you should do, but that's probably what I would do, kind of thing. A very visual. I mean, you can see it, you can hear it. It's a very visceral world. You can, and he writes that way too. So it's not just like, oh, it's noir. If you've ever read any film noir or seen any film noir or like Pulp Fiction type stuff, not the movie, the actual what the movie came from, which is Pulp Fiction. So that was book one. He plays basically a private detective being hired by this guy and ends up doing all kinds of fun stuff. Book two, Broken Angels. Broken Angels is the sequel. Same main character, Takeshi Kovacs. It's been, I believe, if I'm right, it's 30 to 50 years, somewhere in that range. You're not really 100% sure, it doesn't really matter. Our hero / anti-hero has, he's no longer a private detective. This time we find him, he's a mercenary fighting on one side of a civil war on a new planet, which is out in who knows where. They never really explain, in the astrophysical sense of the word, where things are. Yeah, civil war going on. He's fighting in it. He's one of a couple of envoys being employed by this mercenary group. And all of a sudden this guy comes up to him. It's more or less like secret treasure, kind of. Basically, this guy's found a Martian spaceship, and he wants to sell it to the highest bidder. Corporations are very powerful in this world. They kind of run everything. The government, yeah, technically they're in charge, but the governments are really, or the corporations are really what's running it. Sounds like another place I know. And he kind of like, yeah, so you end up grabbing, kind of think like, I don't want to say Indiana Jones because that's oversimplifying it, but kind of like that, like, going off to find the magical treasure, which in this case happens to be a Martian spaceship, in the middle of a war with all kinds of people fighting around you and all kinds of stuff. They also managed to dig up, basically because there was a war going on, they managed to dig up this, basically like their dirty dozen. They go and they find all these special forces, in the world, saying special forces guys, specialists in this and that and the other, that are going to go with them on this mission because they've got to, get there and do this and do that and yada yada yada. I'd say the first one's still better because usually it's hard to beat, a sequel's hard to beat the original. Book three, and unfortunately the final book in the series, Woken Furies. In your pants. There, I did it. Takeshi Kovacs. It's been, indeterminate number of years, doesn't really matter how long. We find him back on his home planet, running around, causing problems. And as usually happens in these books, through just random circumstance and happenstance and just chance encounters, he runs into this girl in a bar, saves her from some psycho-religious zealots who he happens to be slaughtering on the whole as well. And basically, you've got a continent on his home planet. Takeshi's home planet is surrounded by orbitals, which are kind of like satellites. Imagine if the GPS network was made by someone else and shot down anything bigger than, say, a light helicopter that got to higher than, like, say, 1,000 feet. And if there were all kinds of other stipulations, like based on technology and weight and mass and speed and all this stuff. So basically no one flies on this planet, which is also like 90% water. And when I say 90% water, I don't mean like, Earth is 75% water. I mean like the whole damn planet is water, has 3 moons for huge tides, and also is basically just a large collection of islands, with the exception of one major continent, which in a civil war before the envoys were developed, fucked it up by leaving all these nanotech robot things destroying it. They're basically AI-run, independently AI-run robot fighting thingies. Yeah, it's just really good. I'm not even going to bother trying to explain the third book because you kind of have to read the first and second. Reasons why it's awesome. One, Takeshi is incredibly, he's not likable. I mean, you really shouldn't like the guy, but you kind of do because he ends up coming from the right place even when he's not. I mean, even, when he shouldn't be, he is, and you just kind of are like, wow. The best analogy I can make is if you've ever seen the movie Payback with Mel Gibson, think kind of like that. Other reasons is how visceral it is. Talking like, I just finished the third book yesterday. Again, I've read these 6 times in the past 3 years, this whole series. So it's, every time I need something to read, if I'm anything new, I just grab it because it's that good. There was a scene where he's talking about how, he hadn't slept for like a day and a half and his eyes felt gritty. And just like a simple line like that, and you're just like, oh God, I know that. Yeah, it feels like there's sand in your eyes, and there's not, and they just feel like gummy and gritty. Yeah, I get that. So very visceral, and you can feel it, and the smells and the taste and that sort of thing are good. Doesn't hold anything back, doesn't pull any punches. It's very, very graphic, not for little people. If you have a problem with graphic violence, not the book for series for you. Just no punches pulled, and I think that kind of says something about us and that sort of thing, which I'm not going to go into. But yeah, good stuff. Just the way he makes things, like, he invents history for the 500 years in between for all these other worlds too, as well as our own history and the things that have happened. But it's not like a big deal. We don't have a chapter talking about, how this happened or that happened. There's no explanation of the breakthrough of altered carbon and how we got cortical stacks. It's just accepted. You just go with it. Here it is. Run with it. It's mentioned in passing. Understanding Day is mentioned in passing in a conversation between two characters. We can talk to whales. Whales can talk to us. Okay, well, yeah, that's awesome. Do you want to know more? Too bad. It's just a passing conversation between two people. Things like that, inventing religions for other people or geopolitical ideal systems, i.e. A Quellist, which, wow, I would love to read the combined works of Quellcrist Falconer. You'd have to read the series to understand, but imagine if you took kind of like Che Guevara and mixed him with, say, George Carlin, and then made him into a girl who led a revolution to overthrow the government and worked and made it better for everybody. I think that's the best way I can describe it. But I mean, you get quotes like, face the facts, then deal with it. Like, that's kind of the mantra. Really good stuff. I've rambled way too long. This is going to be like 13 minutes long, so I got to stop now. I'll edit it all down to something reasonable, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.